Have you ever wondered how our eyes can trick us into seeing things that aren't there? Picture a magician, clad in a cape, pulling a white rabbit out of an empty hat. We know it's a trick, an illusion, but our eyes insist on seeing a rabbit materializing from nothing. This, my friends, is a perfect metaphor for how our eyes can sometimes deceive us. Just as the magician uses sleight of hand to create an illusion, our eyes can give us a distorted view of reality. Now, let's take a step back and ask ourselves why this happens. Why are our eyes, the very tools we rely on to navigate our world, prone to these sorts of tricks? The answer lies in the fact that vision is not just about what our eyes capture. It's also about how our brains interpret this information. Think of your eyes as cameras, constantly taking snapshots of the world around you. But these snapshots are not complete pictures. They're like jigsaw puzzle pieces, and it's up to your brain to put these pieces together to form a coherent image. But sometimes, just like when you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, the pieces don't quite fit together as they should. And when this happens, we end up with optical illusions, images that our brain interprets in a way that doesn't match reality. Our eyes capture light, shapes, and colors, but it's our brain that tells us what these elements mean. It's our brain that tells us that a series of lines and curves is a face, that a certain combination of colors is a sunset, or that a certain pattern of light and shadow is a rabbit coming out of a hat. And sometimes, our brain gets it wrong. Our eyes are the magician's hands, creating the illusion, while our brain is the audience, interpreting and making sense of it. And just like a magician's audience, our brain can be fooled into seeing things that aren't truly there. So, our eyes and brain work together to create a picture of the world, but sometimes this picture isn't as accurate as we might think. Imagine you're wandering through a desert, and suddenly you spot a gleaming lake in the distance. But as you approach, the lake vanishes. What just happened? Picture yourself as a weary traveler, parched and seeking respite from the relentless sun. You spot a shimmering body of water, a mirage. It's a tantalizing sight, offering the promise of cool relief. But as you draw closer, the illusion evaporates, leaving nothing but hot sand in its wake. This is the desert's deception, a mind-bending trick conjured by light and heat. Let's delve into the science of it. The phenomenon at play here is called a mirage, and it's all about the refraction of light. Normally, light travels in a straight line, but when it passes through different mediums, say from cooler to hotter air, it bends or refracts. But it's not just in the desert that our eyes can be fooled. Even in our everyday surroundings, we often see things that aren't there. Ever looked at a straight stick submerged in water and seen it as bent? This is a classic example of how our eyes trick us. It's an optical illusion that we've all encountered, whether while washing dishes, taking a swim, or simply observing a pond. The stick isn't really bent, but our eyes perceive it as such. This illusion is due to a phenomenon known as light refraction. Now, imagine light as a mischievous sprite, darting around with a flashlight. When this sprite shines its light in a straight line, everything seems as it should. But when it decides to be playful, it casts the light through different mediums, like air and water, causing it to change direction, to refract. When the sprite shines its light on that straight stick submerged in water, the light bends as it passes from the water to the air. So when it reaches our eyes, it seems as if the stick is bent. This bending of light, this playful sprite's prank, distorts our perception of reality. And it doesn't stop there. The sprite is always at play, causing the stars to twinkle as their light refracts through Earth's atmosphere, making the moon look larger when it's near the horizon, or creating the illusion of a wet road ahead on a hot day. In each scenario, the sprite's flashlight, the light, refracts, bending and twisting as it passes through different mediums, playing tricks on our eyes and leading us to perceive things that aren't truly there. So this world that we see around us, it's not always what it seems. Our eyes, brilliant as they are, can sometimes be fooled. They're susceptible to the sprite's pranks, to the bending and twisting of light, to the tricks of refraction. So even when we're not wandering through the desert, our eyes can still be tricked by the cunning play of light and our brain's interpretation of it. But why does our brain fall for these tricks? Why can't it differentiate between what's real and what's illusory? Imagine our brain as a seasoned detective, always on the case, tirelessly working to make sense of the world around us. This seasoned detective is presented with a relentless stream of information, a constant barrage of sensory clues. To manage this deluge, our brain, like any good detective, has to piece together the evidence, fill in the gaps, and make assumptions. But sometimes this detective jumps to conclusions based on incomplete or misleading evidence. Let's think about it like this. Your brain, our detective, is given the task of solving a complex puzzle with missing pieces. Instead of admitting defeat, our brain bravely steps up and fills in the blanks using its database of past experiences, expectations, and assumptions. It's a bit like a detective deciding that a suspect must be guilty because they were in the vicinity of the crime and had a motive, even though there's no direct evidence linking them to the crime. This process, known as perceptual inference, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's incredibly efficient, allowing us to navigate our world smoothly and react quickly to potential threats. It's the reason why we can recognize faces in a crowd or why we instinctively swerve to avoid an object in the road. On the other hand, this same process can lead us astray, causing us to see things that aren't really there. It's like our detective sticking to their initial hunch, despite new evidence suggesting otherwise. This is what happens when we encounter optical illusions. Our brain stubbornly clings to its assumptions, leading to misinterpretations of the visual information it's receiving. So, when we see a snake that turns out to be a rope, or a desert mirage that turns out to be an illusion, it's not because our eyes are lying to us. It's because our brain, the puppet master behind the scenes, is trying its best to make sense of incomplete and confusing information. So, in trying to make sense of the world, our brain sometimes leads us astray, making us see things that aren't truly there. So, we've seen how our eyes and brain can team up to trick us into seeing things that aren't there. It's like a magic show where the magician is your own mind, conjuring up illusions right before your very eyes. It's all about light refraction, atmospheric conditions, and cognitive processing. Think of light refraction as the mischievous sprite, bending the path of light, creating mirages, and making straight sticks look bent in water. Atmospheric conditions, then, are the stage settings. They set the scene, manipulate the light, and provide the perfect backdrop for the illusion. But the real wizard behind the curtain is cognitive processing. It's the mastermind that interprets the distorted information sent by the eyes and weaves it into a believable narrative. It takes in the skewed reality and presents it as fact. So the next time you think you see a lake in a desert or a straight stick looking bent in water, remember, your eyes and brain might just be playing a trick on you.